The power of no. No is naturally thought of as a negative word. We're taught from the time that we're young to avoid the word no. We use the word no to refuse things, to turn down opportunities, to declare ourselves as unyielding and unmoving. In fact, we are told not to use it. Yes is shown to us as being bold and energizing, making you open to possibility and opportunity, while no is a slammed door in a locked house. Yes is the open skies and the wide open spaces of the world at your disposal. Yes means we're amenable. It makes us likable. Yes are all the who's and whoville, while no is the Grinch, wanting to take everything away. It's a pretty grim picture. The sad thing is, most of us go through life never realizing that what we've been taught is wrong. No is a boundary line. It defines the edges between yourself and the world. It's what protects us and makes us stronger. It is the word that holds all the ability to control your own destiny. With no, you set the standard for both how you wish to be treated and how much you will allow others to dictate your life. In short, no holds the power, while yes becomes the lie that pens us in. No is our own possibility and our opportunity for growth, and is the way we get things done. How does no do all that and more? It saves your time. Perhaps the biggest reason to use no is because of the time wasted when you don't. After all, we all only get 24 hours in a day, and it's up to us how we use them. By saying yes to every request, the problem becomes apparent almost immediately. You quite simply run out of time. Your schedule gets so packed in that it becomes impossible to breathe, much less get any of your own work accomplished. Saying no puts your day back into your own hands. This isn't about being selfish. It's being protective of one of your most valuable resources, your time. That's not to say you can't spare an hour for a friend or take on that extra project, but you should be the one to decide if that's a valuable use of your day or not. How do you go about doing that? You start with an understanding of where your hours go and how you spend or intend to spend your time. You begin by setting a to-do list the night before. This establishes how you wish to use your time for the day before you even wake up. It's much easier to protect a schedule that's already in place than it is to try and protect time that even you're not sure you have or not. From there, it's a matter of protecting your time. Be aware of your hours in the day when you're being asked to do something. If you're not sure whether or not you actually do have time for something new, then you simply hold off on answering that particular request by asking for some time to consider the matter seriously. Doing so gives you time to check your schedule and see if you actually do have room on your schedule or not for the project. It sets expectations and avoids exploitation. When you say yes to everything, then anything goes. First, being so versatile in accepting requests means that people know that they can ask you for the moon, the sun, and a half dozen stars. And as it becomes apparent that you're the type to say yes, it invites exploitation of the worst kind. After all, someone who always says yes is very easy to take advantage of. Sadly, human nature dictates that this kind of weakness will be rooted out and used relentlessly by those who are maybe not as kind or even as ethical as the rest of us. Most of us won't even realize that it's happening until it's too late. How do you know when you're being taken advantage of? Check your feelings. If you're feeling resentful, then it's usually a pretty good indicator that you're not being appreciated for your work. Also, be alert for the repeat offenders, those who come at you time and time again with requests one after another. In saying no, you can take back those expectations and the power that comes with it. You start with setting your own goals and maintaining them. So if you become known as that person who won't work on Saturday because that's your day with the family, eventually people will quit asking. They will come to realize that the answer is always going to be no on Saturdays. What's more, this becomes part of who you are. The world around you becomes aware of your goals and knows that you're a person who sticks to your word. If you say no to certain kinds of things, then expectations form. It becomes obvious that there's no point in even asking you for things if you're going to say no anyway, which further protects you from frivolous time-wasting requests. This has the strange outgrowth of being admired for your integrity and for always sticking to what you believe in. It helps you avoid being overwhelmed. As mentioned before, the more you say yes, the more packed your schedule gets. Having this much work, or even leisure activity, gets overwhelming very fast, especially when you find that you tend to say yes to the point where your own downtime suffers. Before you know it, you can't even remember when you last had a minute to yourself, and that's not healthy. The problem with living under this kind of constant stress is that sooner or later your body will tell you that enough is enough. This is where you start seeing problems. Weight gain from grabbing too many quick meals, high blood pressure from constant deadlines, poor sleep at night because you're worried about how you're going to get it all done. This adds up very quickly. Keep it up and you'll be assured of a quick trip to the doctor or even the hospital at some point. While that's guaranteed to clear your schedule, it won't be in the way that you want. So, how do you get on top of things? You start by protecting your commitment level. When you were a child, you might have been chided by putting too much food on your plate. You might have even been told your eyes are bigger than your stomach. It's a great saying that reminds us that too often we overestimate our abilities. Only this time, we're not talking about food, but in the level of work you can take on. We forget to build in that cushion just in case the project takes a little longer. Or we convince ourselves that we can do the project in less time than we should. We think that we actually do have time in our schedule for that extra project when your to-do list is trying desperately to tell you otherwise. Either way, you wind up being committed to more than you can manage. How do you solve this? You start by cutting yourself some slack. If you want to take on something new, great. But be sure to be reasonable in the amount of time that it's going to take. Sit down and evaluate this honestly. Is this a weekly commitment? Daily? What kind of deadline is already attached? Is that feasible? Calculate an estimate of what your investment of resources would be in regard to the project, and then build in a little extra just in case something comes up. Also, be reasonable about your current workload. If you already have more than enough to do, then it's probably time to say no. After all, you can't do everything, no matter how hard you try. It prioritizes yourself. This is probably the hardest concept listed here. To understand the importance of taking care of your own needs first, you're going to have to accept that you have value and that your needs are important. You might actually have some trouble wrapping your mind around this. After all, people who say yes all the time tend to be people pleasers. People pleasers have a tendency to put the needs of others before their own. Why? A lot of this stems from our childhood. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that thinking about ourselves first was selfish. Or we find out that when we do something for someone else, that it made the other person happy with us. This need to please became ingrained in us very young. And then, as with most things learned in childhood, we carried the concept into adulthood. But we frequently forget that it's absolutely impossible to take care of the needs of anyone else if our own needs aren't met first. You can't work if you're so hungry that you're lost in a brain fog. You're never going to meet your deadline if you're so exhausted that you can't put together the thoughts on paper that you need for that report. And if you forget to exercise, eventually your body will let you know that it really doesn't have the energy for one more commitment. You have to realize that you really can't give your best when your body is not at its best. This is where you learn how to say no for the so-called selfish reasons. You decide what you need to do to protect your own health so that you can say yes to the things that really matter. This means not letting your schedule interfere with your workout regimen, and making sure you don't skip meals, and that you do get enough hours of sleep at night. But you can't stop there. While physical health is important, your mental health is that much more so. Doing things that tear down your self-esteem, that send you not only into a spiral of self-hate and resentment, will eventually turn into depression. It's nearly impossible to be productive when you're struggling emotionally just to get through the day. So, what can you do? This means saying no to things that will leave you burned out and exhausted emotionally. Some people or projects are drains on your mental resources. You're no good to anyone else if you take care of yourself physically and neglect to protect your soul. So, if working with someone is bad for your mental health, it seriously is time to say no, quickly. This is perhaps one of the most important boundaries you'll ever set, and probably the one that will give you back the most power over your life. It prioritizes people you really care about. Why are you saying yes to people that don't even matter? Here's one of the worst problems about saying yes all the time. We get indiscriminate in who we say yes to. This means that every request that comes at us becomes equally important. Should that really be the case? Probably not. Saying no means we take back the ability to decide who it is we want to work with and who we want to support. It means that not everyone is equal in importance in your life and that you get to decide who is and who isn't. This is an amazingly powerful feeling. How do you do this? You start by establishing more boundaries. Are you sensing a theme? When you get a request from someone, ask yourself who is doing the asking. Is this someone you like and respect? Can you work with them regardless? Sometimes you're not given a choice in the matter of who you work with. But if you have some flexibility, you might want to look into other options. Working with people you don't like is very draining emotionally and even physically. You'll get tired faster and won't be as productive. So, what can you do? If you're not interested in taking on the project, can you do something in a different capacity that keeps you from working with difficult people? This might mean offering a no with an alternative solution. For example, maybe you don't really get along with some of the other parents in the parent-teacher organization at your child's school. You might decide that serving on a committee with those individuals would be too much of a headache. But you have no problem at all with volunteering with the kids on sports day. This creates a compromise that you can live with and still allows you to be part of your child's life at school. But sometimes you're just going to have to say no. When that happens, keep in mind that by saying no to the people you don't want to work with, it frees up time and resources so that you do have the ability to say yes to the people that really matter. And that's important. It lowers frustration. Frustration is a part of life. What if you can reduce it by the simple act of saying no? Nothing is quite so frustrating as being taken for granted. After a while, you can't help but think that if you didn't jump up and say yes to everything, that no one would ever see you at all. Worse, when you say no, you tend to prove that very point. But then try to get your own things done. You'll find just how difficult that can be because no matter how many times you've said yes to someone else, you're still the one hearing no when you need something done. The quickest way to lower our frustration is to first of all cut the dead weight out of your life. This means getting rid of those projects and people that you find frustrating. Why are you putting yourself through the emotional distress for someone who doesn't appreciate you in the first place? How do you do that? Start by looking at what you're being asked. How does the request make you feel? If you've got resentment and frustration building before you so much as open your mouth, it's definitely time to say no. Those feelings are only going to build and grow worse over time, so the longer you're on the project, the more you're likely to regret it. Saying no now will reduce all that frustration right at the start. But the interesting side effect of saying no is that you're more apt to be both noticed and respected when you do. When you say no, you're telling the world that you have value and worth, and that you respect yourself enough to take care of yourself. Not to mention, the very fact that you're able to confidently say no once in a while gives your yes that much more value. After all, who would you rather hang out with? The person who says yes to absolutely everything, or the one who has chosen to say yes to you alone? It's really no contest. It allows us to say yes to the really important things. As was said before, there truly is only so much that you can do in the day. What all of this boils down to is that we want to be in control of what we do and why. This means you pick and choose the things that matter the most to you. How do you do that? You start with a clear understanding of what you hope to gain out of life. What are your goals? Where do you want to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 or 10? Use those ideas as a template for the things you say yes to. If something doesn't serve your purpose in some way, if it doesn't help you to reach your goal or to satisfy you in some other way, then it's up to you to say no so that the next thing that comes along that is beneficial can be said yes to. It really is just that easy. Does everything have to be career-oriented, though? Not in the least. We have personal goals as well. Maybe your realization is that in 5 years, your kids will be going off to college. That might mean that your goals right now would be to spend some quality time with them before they go. Also, when evaluating the things that matter, you want to keep in mind the stuff that gets you excited. What captures your interest? If you have a fascination for local politics, a love for books, or a desire to save the whales, you need to figure that into your plans as well. Saying no might mean a chance to start a book club, or a petition, or even to run for local office. None of this would be possible if you'd already overbooked yourself. Saying no then frees us up to save all of our resources, all of our time, all of our energy for those things that we want to do most. This puts the power squarely in your hands as you become the master of your fate. In the end, saying no is you at your most powerful. Only someone who is confident, healthy, and capable has the ability to say no in such a way as to organize their life according to what is most beneficial to them. Choose how you spend your time. Then, decide who you want to spend it with. By taking control of your own desires, your needs, and your health, you are using no to create a you that's the very best version of yourself. It sounds exciting, doesn't it? Keep reading to find out how to recognize that the time has come to say no.